everyone and welcome back to my channel. This week's video we're going to be talking about the grids that you can use for creating murals. We're going to be talking Doodle grid versus square grid. I'll be talking you through what they are, how to use them and finding out which one is best for you.
Hey, I am Nochola the Drawer, an artist and adventurer from the UK. Let's get creative.
Have you ever wondered how to scale up your artwork for large scale? And what's an easy way to do it? Well, using grids is the easiest way to get your art large scale so you can paint it for murals. There's different types that you can use and that's what we're going to be discussing today. Have you ever heard of the Doodle grid but not sure what it is and how to use it? Or are you thinking, how do I use a square grid? Let's talk through both the options and see what is going to work best for you and creating your mural large scale. So let's dive in, talking about first the traditional square grid. A square grid is exactly what it says on the tin. You're using a system of squares to grid out your canvas, your wall, whatever surface it is you're painting on. This is quite often the traditional way you are taught how to get things in proportion. When you learn about art at school, you'll be asked to put a square grid on a certain size and then transfer whatever it is you're drawing onto that size. For example, if you have a huge wall, you'll have certain squares drawn out of a certain width and you'll know what the width of those squares are. So it'll be easy for you to then scale up your artwork to the right proportion. So if you know that in the bottom left where the first square is, there is an arm, then that's where you'll start the line of your arm. And it means that you just have to count the squares and where the position is on your canvas, on your wall, and then make sure you're drawing in that square. It's a very traditional way, but you do have to have a square grid drawn on the wall. So you could draw this square grid on the wall using rulers, using chalk and string. You could do this any way that you want to draw a grid on. So it could be pencil, but what you have to think is that you have to get straight lines so that you have a nice, neat grid to then draw on. And this is why I prefer using the Doodle grid, because I'm not very good at straight lines. It also can take a while for you to mark out because if you're measuring each square and making sure that each square is the same size so that there's no disproportion in what you create. Whereas if you use the Doodle grid, it's much more freestyle. So let's talk about the Doodle grid. The Doodle grid is a way for you to make marks on the wall as reference points. So like the square grid, you have a reference on the wall to draw with. What does the Doodle grid consist of? And it's exactly that, doodles. It can be whatever you like. But basically you need to cover the wall in different shapes so that you have different reference points on the wall. For example, you couldn't do all stars because then you'd be like, which number star I'm at? And then you would have to count like you do with the square grid. Whereas a Doodle grid, you may want to have a penguin, a word, a number, just a curved line, a star, all different things on the Doodle grid so that you have different reference points throughout the wall. The concentration of your Doodle grid depends on how much detail your design has. If you have a lot of detail in your design, you're going to want a much more compact Doodle grid to make sure you're drawing every little bit on. But if not, then you just need to cover the whole area, but it doesn't have to be every inch of the wall. Because you can easily look at the doodles and say, okay, from that love heart, I need to go to the star to create the arch of the neck. That's the Doodle grid. Why do I like this method over the square grid personally? I can get those marks on the wall really quickly. It can be whatever comes to my mind and just draw away. Doesn't have to be neat. I know some people's Doodle grids are so neat and tidy. It looks like the artwork themselves. I also like the fact that quite often people think that the Doodle grid is the mural. They'll get very confused and a bit shocked that they don't really want to see that. Or I have had it before, someone say, oh, I love the Doodle grid. Why did you get rid of it? It's a really fast way. You can use spray paint, you can use chalk, depending on what your surface is. If you spray paint, then you can just quickly move all over the wall and put on the doodle symbols. From the Doodle grid, what you do is you would then take a picture of the doodle grid and overlay your artwork digitally. So it can be done on your phone. I use an app on my phone to do it. The app that I use is any app that you can just overlay your image of your design onto the doodle grid of the wall, and then you know at what point that the doodle grid crosses the artwork. So then you can easily transfer your artwork in the right proportions onto the wall, and you're not getting lost. You don't have to count, and it's a very simple way. It also means that you can put your artwork on any surface, any shape, any amount of space that you have. And so you don't have to worry, like if there's bumps in the wall, if you've got a grid on, you have to kind of keep a straight line, but you don't have to worry about that with the doodle grid. So that was a quick overview of what the square grid is versus the doodle grid, and explaining how you can use each one to create your artwork on large scale for murals. It's up to you which one works better for you. I know there's still people that use the square grid. If you're very good with straight lines, if you love the neatness of a square, that may be for you. But for me personally, I prefer the doodle grid. They're both such useful tools to have as an artist, so I recommend having a go at both, and let me know in the comments which one you prefer, which one you're going to have a try at using. It can be done in your sketchbook too. It doesn't have to just be on a mural, but it's the best way for scaling up artwork. I have other videos on the doodle grid. I will leave the links below, and give me a thumbs up if you found this video useful. And don't forget to click subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you for the next creative adventure. While you're here, don't forget to press subscribe below so you get weekly videos of creative adventures, behind the scenes and artist resources.